This is Matt Brown, and you're listening to Just a Good Conversation. Lynn Rogers wanted to be a baseball player at Cal State Fullerton. Funny thing happened. He became one of the best coaches in university history. Not in baseball, but in women's gymnastics. That alone would make a good story, but Lynn started tinkering around the family kitchen and made a company. Coach's Oats was born in 1992, and Lynn had no idea what was about to happen.
You know, we had people show up at 9 o'clock in the morning and leave at 5, and we had the family room, a porch off the office, one of our bedrooms. That was all Coach's Oats. And in fact, when we actually moved into an office, one of my sons, the truck came and took the desks and all the office furniture that we had, and he said, well, when are they coming back for the rest of the stuff? What do you mean? He goes, well, aren't we going to go live with like he thought you lived with Coach's Oats. So he thought we were going to be moving out of the house and go live wherever the office was going to be. It just made sense to him, right? Because he was used to seeing everybody.
I'm Matt Brown, host of Just a Good Conversation. Take a listen to our archives. My guests have ranged from authors, farmers, and photo editor Jim Colton.
There used to be a day when, editors would be able to whack that crap down and put out what's worth seeing. But now it's like a fire hose. And now that everybody has an iPhone and thinks they're a professional photographer, they're posting everything up without any vetting, without any information, without any, knowledge of what they're doing other than posting their favorite breakfast that they just shot or whatever.
Go to justagoodconversation.com for all our archives. Let's take a quick break for my sponsor before diving into my conversation with Lynn Rogers. I am very fortunate. I have the great coach, Lynn Rogers, sitting here, a guest on the podcast. How are you, sir?
Nervous.
like a meet against UCLA?
Oh, I tell you, I do. I have anxiety sitting here right now. So I got a microphone in my face. And
There's no pommel horse here, no uneven bars. This is just a conversation. Two guys talking about, your love.
Well, you said the word great, so that makes me nervous right there. So
you're already sweating.
Call my wife.
I did a ton of research on you, and it's fascinating. Your career and everything you're doing. It's a wonderful, wonderful research and deep dive. Can you tell me this? Because this I could not find. I found little bits and pieces. But where did you grow up? Are you a local kid?
I am not.
You're
I was
not.
Born in West Virginia.
That's nowhere near Fullerton.
No.
That's coal mine country.
Born in West Virginia. Grew up there as a young boy and then moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Even
a town
deep?
called Bethel Park. And came out here in 1968 to play baseball, actually, at Cal State Fullerton.
So, was your idea, though, from Pennsylvania, like I'm coming out west to play ball or to go to school?
Mostly it was to dress like the Beach Boys and learn how to surf.
The influence.
The Beach Boys were huge, in 1967, 68, and California was where I wanted to be.
How dreamy was that? People don't realize the Beach Boys' influence on the country was
kind of clothes we wore, songs that we liked.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Where we moved. I drove out here on Route 66 because that was a TV show that was popular back in the day too. And I didn't have a Corvette like Todd and Buzz, but moved to Fullerton, and I was afraid to drive on the freeways because Pittsburgh, we didn't have any freeways.
No, nothing like that, right?
And to get to the beach, you took Commonwealth to Beach Boulevard, south on Beach Boulevard, that dumped you out in Huntington Beach.
Right there.
And that became my beach, and that's now where I live.
Wow. So, was your focus on Cal State Fullerton, or was it any school in?
My parents lived in Fullerton. They actually moved out here a year before I did. And I think I have the numbers right. I believe a semester around that time was like $60 a semester or something like that. It was just a crazy number.
Oh my gosh.
I think, it was under $100.
Right.
At least that's my memory. And we had 4 boys in the family, and so that was where I was going to start to go to college.
Okay.
And I ended up staying there.
Wow. Fullerton was, 10 11 years old. It was a new school at the time, right?
It had just become Cal State Fullerton, or,
right.
or maybe it's even Cal State University at Fullerton, I think, at the time.
Because it was Orange State originally.
Yeah, it was Orange State right before that. I think there were 5 buildings on campus. We had the library, the gym, we had the music building, and the science building.
That's just nothing of the landscape that it is today.
Oh, no, it's not even. It's unrecognizable.
When was the last time you were on campus?
A couple years ago.
Does it surprise you, the growth and the change? And
well,
even
I'd been
now,
and I'd been there like a year before that,
right.
A couple years before that. So I've sort of watched it evolve, but no, it's just it's not the same university.
No, yeah, it's definitely not that 5-building place you grew up on. So were you a baseball fanatic? Did you love baseball?
I loved a lot of things growing up. I wasn't that guy that was just focused on one thing. And sometimes I look back and I think, I wish maybe I had done that more.
Okay.
Because once I turned about maybe 19, 20 years old, I met Dick Wolfe, the men's gymnastics coach, and his influence changed my world. And he was singularly focused. And I had not been. I loved baseball, but I also loved cars. I loved, hanging out with my friends. I loved surfing. I liked doing a lot of things.
Damn those Beach Boys.
And so, yeah, I could have been a better baseball player. I could have been a better surfer. I could have been a better lot of things. And, but then that changed.
How was that, though, going out for baseball and meeting Augie?
Actually, to show you, I played there in 1968 for 1 year.
Okay.
And Augie wasn't there yet.
Augie's not there yet.
Bill Fulton was the head coach. Great guy. Really good guy. And, Augie came the year after.
Okay. What was it like then figuring out, okay, that baseball's not my place?
Actually,
was that hard?
Actually, it was done for me because at the end of my freshman year, I had a lung problem. My lung collapsed, and I had to have surgery. And this is at some point in time, you're probably going to say, "Well, how'd you get in gymnastics from baseball?" Right?
Right. But
so my lung collapsed, and when I was in the hospital back in the day, the surgery I had you were in the hospital for 10 days, and there was a long recovery, so I had to drop out of school. And one of the things the doctor recommended for me to get healthy again was to take either a yoga class or maybe gymnastics to get some of my flexibility back. And back in 1969 or 70, whenever this was all happening, yoga was not like Lululemon pants and
right.
Cool people, business people, going and taking yoga. This was, guys with sandals and robes and stuff like that.
Very hippie, right?
Yeah, very much so. And that didn't appeal to me.
That's interesting that the doctor would even think that was something that would be good for you.
Well, a lot of stretching.
Right.
Yeah. So, but I.
That's very now.
Yeah. But I was in the hospital a long time, and I had lost a lot of flexibility. And I was home in bed for a period of time. So I took gymnastics, and that changed my world.
Where did you take it?
At Cal State Fullerton.
So they had just
they had a beginning gymnastics class. And the thing that I liked about gymnastics that was missing in my life, it wasn't missing in baseball. If I was smart, I'd have taken what they were teaching in gymnastics and applied it to a sport that I already had some skill in, right?
Right.
I wasn't going to go anywhere with my gymnastics at that point in time.
Did it scare you, though? I mean, here you are. You've had a collapsed lung. You've had this major surgery, and now you're moving and twisting and tumbling and all the things that you hadn't done the year prior?
No, I had recovered from the surgery, and I was in pretty good shape. But what came through in the gymnastics more than anything was, in gymnastics, you have to give 100% all the time. If you think about it, like backflip.
Right.
If you only give 75% in a backflip, you land on your head. If you only give 50% on doing a handstand, you fall on your head. I mean, you have to give 100% every time you do a skill. And in baseball, I had been able to get away with some days giving 75%, some days thinking more about my car, some days thinking more about going to the beach. And the thing that really, really impressed me about the sport of gymnastics was that it required so much discipline and commitment. And at that time in my life, I wanted that.
That's pretty interesting at such a young age for you to make that, and not, it struck you. It made sense to you at that age.
Totally. And I was fortunate on one hand. I had parents that gave me a wide lane to drive in. I wasn't pushed in any one direction or really asked a lot to perform at a certain level. But the downside of that is I also didn't learn how good that felt when you gave 100% to something. And like I said, when I met Coach Wolfe and started to learn about the sport of gymnastics, it just changed my heart, changed my world.
What are you studying at this time at Fullerton?
Physical education.
Okay, so you're in the wheelhouse.
Yeah, PE major.
Yeah, PE. So then,
not a lot of homework.
Where do you go from there? You finish with Cal State Fullerton, you get your degree.
I did.
Are you thinking, okay, what do I do?
Yeah, I don't know if you remember Coach Witchy. Coach Witchy was the tennis coach back in the day, and he was Dick Wolf's office partner. And anyway, so when I graduated Cal State, I was really getting involved in the gymnastics. Like, what can I do with this, right? Maybe I'll become a high school coach, maybe, and teach gymnastics at a local high school.
Were you thinking already that
Mm-hmm.
it's gymnastics
because
for me?
I started the gymnastics class I took from Coach Wolfe was probably my sophomore year. So my sophomore year, my junior year, my senior year, I living, eating, breathing gymnastics. I would go to every meet, every clinic I could go to, every camp I could go to. I started teaching it at the YMCA. I knew that I wanted to chase that sport. So when I graduated, I enrolled at UCI to get my teaching credential. And I sat in a English class or some class with homework.
Oh boy!
For about an hour, and I said, "This is not for me. This isn't going to fly." So I went back to the university that day. Went to Coach Wolfe's office. He wasn't there. Coach Witchy was. I knew Ron, and we got to talking. And he said, "You ought to go get your master's, and maybe you ought to think about coaching in college."
Did you need your master's at that time to coach college, or is just something like
I don't
you
know
thought
if,
it was?
I don't know, but it sounded better to me than taking the English class where I had to do homework. So
better than homework.
Yeah. So I started down that road, and at the same time that I did that, I walked out to the parking lot, or was walking back to the car, and on the bulletin board, back in the days where they had bulletin boards where you use thumbtacks and stuff. There was a card, a 3x5 note card, that said they were going to start a women's gymnastics program. And
now, also for people, a note card is paper.
Yeah.
It's so funny how it's on Twitter now, or it's an email.
And I had done some private club coaching. I was still private club coaching at the time, and I had some experience, and I was naive enough to think that they might hire me.
I think it's amazing they put up a 3x5 card to notify that was it.
Well,
somebody randomly would wander around on campus and be like, "I'll take that job."
Hey, it was $385 a year. It was $385 budget and $500 for coaching. So they weren't going to put a big piece of paper up.
They didn't put those monies on the 3x5.
I
did
don't
they?
remember.
I hope not.
God,
they wouldn't get anybody to sign.
I don't remember.
But so you took a swing at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And interestingly enough, Neil Stoner was the athletic director at the time, and he hired, actually another person applied for the job as well, and she was a high school coach. She was coaching at Irvine High School, I believe.
Okay.
And really good person, and she ended up marrying Dick Wolfe, by the way. Yeah, her name was Charlotte Schwartz at the time, and the way things worked out, she and Dick Wolfe ended up getting married, and she and I co-coached the first year that we were there, and then she decided she wanted to stay with the high school program and move in that direction, and I wanted to stay with the $500 a year college direction.
So that worked out to about, a couple of cents a day?
Trust me, I had other jobs.
You had to.
I was working at the YMCA, yeah.
What was that interview process like for you? Like just like that was your first big job interview. You're going for it. You're sitting there and you're going, you're starting a program. I don't have any coaching experience. I'm your guy.
I had some coaching experience. But
not at college,
not at the college
right?
level. I knew nothing about, and back then it was AIAW,
right?
And then it turned into NCAA. But I was probably overly confident. I was probably more full of myself than I should have been. I don't know if that helped me or hurt me in the interview, but Neil made some pretty good hires, and I'm really thankful that he believed in me. And it worked out.
What do you think he saw? Confidence? Because you got to have it as coach.
Well, I don't know if they expected that much. I think they were trying to check a box.
Okay.
Right? We want to put another women's sport in here, and we have a good men's gymnastics program, so that kind of makes sense. And I was a Fullerton graduate, but he was a young guy too, and very accomplished at an early age. And I think hopefully he saw in me that I had a vision. So,
what was the first couple of steps for you then to put together a program from scratch? Like, what was that like? You got to go out and get people. There's nobody in place.
Well, the advantage I had was I was a private club coach at a really good club, nationally known, very successful club, put kids on different Olympic teams. And so I quickly had a well to draw from.
Okay.
And I pulled a couple kids in from that program who became All-Americans. And also because of my affiliation it was the KIPS gymnastics team, so my affiliation with them, I also had friends that worked for SCATs and friends that worked all over the country. So I was able to bring in some pretty good kids right off the bat. Who
was your regional competition? Was there Stanford and UCLA, SC? Who had women's gymnastics you had to compete with?
Yeah, honestly, the regional competition wasn't that strong. The most our serious competition was across the country. Our first year, we took third in the nation. Actually, it was our second year. First year, we just competed with some of the junior colleges and the local universities. But once we got on the road, Penn State, Southwest Missouri, Clarion. It's not like it is
Clarion.
today.
Where's that?
In Pennsylvania.
Okay.
When Title IX changed a lot of things.
That's what. Yeah, I was going to say
when Title IX came about, all the universities that had strong men's programs, football, basketball, whatever, a lot of that money got shifted into the women's side of the fence, and that meant that a lot of schools like Kentucky and Alabama and Georgia and Florida, they all got really good, really fast. When I started, there were schools that were just, for whatever reason, they chose women's gymnastics as something they wanted to invest in, like a Southwest Missouri, like a Clarion State College. So,
what was the process? I mean, you're getting everything fresh. You got to buy equipment, the layout in the gym. What was that like?
Well, the good news, because of my background with the private clubs, I had people that actually loaned us equipment. And I remember the first road trip we took, I took my coaches, the head coach for the KIPS gymnastics team, he gave me his van, and we took our kids, on the road trip, which was an interesting story.
Wow. Like you just loaded everybody up and went?
The Fullerton way. So I think we had 6 or 7 young women on the team, and the meet was in Salt Lake City. That was our first big away meet. And I think we stopped and spent the night in St. George.
Okay.
Right. It's about halfway. I
right.
think. And it was in January, and it was really cold. And we went and got one room at this hotel, and we split up the box springs and mattresses for the athletes, and I slept in the van. So I'd wake up about every couple hours and turn the heater on just to keep warm. And then we ate at the grocery store. Dick Wolfe taught me that trick. When he would take his teams on the road, they would shop at the grocery store, and they wouldn't go to restaurants because they didn't have the money. The point being, to answer your question, was our early beginnings really depended on a lot of other people helping us and giving us stuff and believing in us. And
were those early groups of women some of your best like best memories because they believed in you and in this program? I mean, today, if you said to somebody, we're eating in a grocery store and you're sleeping on a box spring, they would think you were insane.
Some of the young people, I just spoke with one of them about a week or so ago. She was on our team national championship in 1979. She started with us in 77, I believe, was her first year. And yeah, those kids were sewing their own leotards. Those kids were, buying their own lunches. Those kids, like her scholarship was probably books and tuition. And remember, Cal State Fullerton books and tuition was like a couple $100, and those kids figured it out about commitment, and how much you put in is what you get out, not what you're given.
Right.
And over the years that changed, and it wasn't near as fun as it was at the beginning.
Wow. I mean, that must have been one hell of a couple of years, that run of like building it from scratch. Must have been just...
I guess we never thought about it in that respect. It was just like, what do we need? How do we get it?
Was it being youth too? But you being so young, that helped with the energy and keeping it going?
I didn't plan this, but you're in my office now, right?
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite books as a kid, literally. I don't know if you know this book.
Yes.
It's The Little Engine That Could. And that's something, I think I told you, when I met Coach Wolfe and I started learning about the sport of gymnastics, I knew that I wanted to give it 100%. So maybe it was because I was young. I don't know. There's people that do that feel that way and live that way when they're 30 and 40 and 50 and 60 and whatever. But that's when it hit me.
What an experience. When did you start to feel comfortable as the coach?
I was talking to my wife just recently. I wasn't ever a guy that worked as hard as I did to win. I think I worked as hard as I did sometimes not to lose, if that makes any sense. I wanted to be in the game, but I don't like losing. And I think that sometimes is more of a motivator than how good it would feel to win. And that's kind of who I am. I'm still that guy today.
You had that run, was it 71 straight?
I don't know. I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, 71 straight wins. Like, when that's happening, we're not talking like basketball where you play 82 games a year. You're not playing that many gymnastics meets in a year. So that streak was over a very long time.
Yeah, 8-9 years.
Yeah.
Something like that.
What was there pressure? Was there people starting to notice it?
Oh, sure. The other, like University of Utah, for example, Alabama, Georgia. We were able to compete because of how well our kids were doing, and we got invited to a lot of good schools, and people, they want to beat you.
Sure.
Right, and so there was pressure for sure.
You don't lose a home meet until 83.
Yeah.
Come on.
I don't know all those numbers. We went for a long time. I know we
first home loss was 83.
I have my friends that tease me because I'm proud of the fact that we went top 3 in the nation 10 years in a row or something like that.
Yeah.
But I have my friends that criticize me because you only won it once, So, and my friend Greg Marson, he won it a whole bunch of times. So,
that first win, what was that like? The big one.
Honestly, and I've told people this, even with my athletes, it was at Penn State in front of 10,000 people. We beat Penn State. Last girl up, the girl I was just talking about, her name was Carolyn Burdick at the time, and she had to score a 9.15 or 9 point something to win, and she scored 9.15. We won by 0.05 of a point or 0.1 of a point, something like that.
What event was she on?
Floor.
Floor, okay.
And they had their best athlete on bars, I think, at the same time, and she had been an Olympian. So like I said, it was the largest crowd ever at Rec Hall at that point in time. Wow. So it was a big deal. we all were super happy right afterwards. The next morning, we were all sitting in the lobby of the hotel getting ready to get on a bus and come home. And the mood wasn't what you would expect. It wasn't joyful. It wasn't, man, it was awesome, man. Man, let's do it again. You know, you were great, whatever. And we all talked about it because everybody recognized we were a really close group of people, and what it was, we knew we hadn't done our best. We won the meet. There was the year before we had done our best and we came in second. And the mentality or the culture that we created, not me, not that I created, but that we as a team, my assistant coaches, the trainers, the athletes, obviously, was that our goal was to go out there and do our best, and we hadn't done our best. And so one of the things that I learned from Coach Wolfe early on was that process trumps goal. You got to focus on the process. You got to give everything to the process. And if you do that, you'll eventually get your goals, but you can't focus on your goals. In other sports, it doesn't matter how you swing the bat. If you get the ball over second base and you get on first, you accomplished your goal, right? No one cares about how you swung the bat necessarily.
Right.
So football, they don't judge you on your form as you dive across the goal line. But gymnastics, every movement is judged. And so the process becomes super, super important. So what happened at Penn State was we realized that we hadn't done because our focus was on the process. And then when we got our goal, we weren't super happy with it that day. Trust me, we got home and got happy about it. Okay. By the time we got home, we got over hey, we didn't do our best. Hey, we're national champions. But
tell me they put you on a plane. You didn't have to drive a van out.
No, we flew. Don Shields was the president, and he called up to congratulate us. And yeah, that was a good deal.
I was saying that's a hell of a long ride to Penn State in a bus full of girls to get out there.
Yeah.
How were the other coaches at the time? I mean, you start off and you've got success, bam, right off the bat. Was Dick or Augie or any of the guys and gals, Judy's there at the time, are they supportive? Are they in awe? Are they can't believe that you've got this rocket ship going all of a sudden?
100%. I'm not a yesterday guy at all. I think we were talking about that earlier. Mm-hmm. But if there was a time in my life that if I could still keep my wife and my boys, if I could go back, Augie, Dick Wolfe, Judy Garment, Neil Stoner, Bobby Dye, Mel Franks, Pete Don, I mean, just all those guys. It was an amazing time. Mm-hmm. It was, and nobody was jealous of it. Everybody else was helpful. If a coach, Vance Redfern was an assistant athletic director. He'd be out there sweeping the halls before gymnastics meet or a basketball game, emptying the trash. It was a tight-knit group of coaches and administrators, and it was awesome. It was the best time of my life.
Yeah, it's funny you don't realize when you're in the best of times when it's happening. And you look back at it later, and you go, boy, that was fun.
Yeah, you're right. To some extent, we were always thinking about, okay, how are we going to win this meet or how are we going to win this game or whatever. And we talked about how are we going to raise this much money.
Right.
There was a lot of that went around. But we enjoyed it. I mean, we enjoyed it. We enjoyed each other for sure.
And you mentioned earlier before we started that your office mate was Judy.
Right. Was
that pretty awesome to have someone that caliber you can maybe bounce ideas off of and use as like...
She taught me so much. She was a great mentor. She was obviously a very skilled coach. She was a really great recruiter. She was an amazing fundraiser. She had a sense of business and a sense of finance, and she knew how to get her program from point A to point B. She was honest with me. She was straightforward with me. We got along really, really well. At one point in time, in fact, I was on a recruiting trip once, and where'd they play? They don't play in Omaha. Where was their?
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Yeah, Oklahoma City, yeah.
Yeah, so they were in Oklahoma for the Nationals. And so I took a detour, and I got to do infield practice with them. I hit
Fungo,
yeah. for the girls. And I was a big fan of hers and her team. And
did you guys bounce off like coaching philosophy
100%.
and for you to like how to deal with women. You know, she's got years of experience with it, and coaching women and men are a little different.
A lot, and we were very open and honest and frank about things. At one point in time, we figured out that if she went to compete or I went to compete, our teams had about a 950% chance of winning whatever it was. I mean, our office was going.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, that office, the two of you were really running it in the school.
Yeah. Well, and another person I should mention too, Leanne Grocke was our athletic director, our women's athletic director.
Right.
And she and Neil were a force to be reckoned with. They were really good at what they did. And you credit Leanne for, I think she might have hired Judy. Neil hired me, but she might have hired Judy, but yeah.
At that time, you know, it's there's winning going on, Title IX's taking place, all these things are happening. There's some coaching changes. Are you feeling a shift in like the early 80s with other teams starting to dump money into their Title IX programs, where now you're not getting maybe every girl, it's more of a competitive in your sport?
100%. Title IX was not great for Cal State Fullerton. I get the point of it. I get obviously the major emphasis was to make sure that there were more opportunities for young women to play sports. At Fullerton, however, Judy and I, we were one of the best fundraisers that we had, and we were able to go out and raise money for our programs, and we had the support of our athletic administration and the president to do that. When Title IX came about, instantly a ton of money was dumped into the bigger schools.
Right.
Like I mentioned before, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Texas.
Who before just didn't even pay attention.
Well, exactly, because they were focused on football, basketball, and baseball.
Right.
All of a sudden now their antenna's up and they want to focus on the women's sports. And so one day Alabama has a budget of whatever, and the next day they got $1 million and they're using a jet to fly their team to wherever. And Fullerton couldn't keep up, right?
Right.
And it was very difficult for us to maintain that. When you look at our winning percentage in the 70s and the 80s, and then you can see it all of a sudden, whoa, what the heck happened
that
here?
mid-80s, it just goes.
Yeah, and that's because we couldn't keep up financially. We were able to give 5 scholarships or 4 scholarships or whatever, and other schools are giving out full rides. So maybe, we don't get the top recruit like we did.
Right. Or you're only be able to give this girl a third of a scholarship, and she's like, well, I can get a full ride to UCLA. I'm off I go.
Yep.
And you can't fault them for that. But it's just a battle.
That's just how it worked out.
Right.
You know, Cal State Fullerton, Southwest Missouri, Clarion State, those small colleges that invested in certain women's programs because they either believed in the personnel or the sport itself, or maybe the athletic director had a background, you know.
Right.
And that went away.
And it happened in all women's sports. Like Old Dominion won women's basketball championship. They probably will never sniff the Final Four again, where they used to be a powerhouse.
Right.
There was a couple other ones like that, and it was sad to see where those little schools had chances, and now it all comes down to budgets.
And I guess you could make the case, if you step back, you take off your Titan sweatshirt and step back and say, well, with the larger schools giving that kind of money to now their women's side of this, more women are going to get to participate. Mm-hmm. Like big schools that can have how many ever sports they have, you know, that from rowing to volleyball to gymnastics to
Stanford
swimming.
Has like 30 some odd. Yeah.
So now more women are getting opportunities than they did before. But still, for us, it was painful, and it ended up really kind of spelling the end of our sport.
Right. It was the slow drip of death that just kind of finally wore out on it.
Yeah, like what happened to football.
Right. Was there ever thought at some point for you, like, maybe I'll either go to the men's side or I'll look at another university? Like, did anybody start calling and knocking on doors during that time for you? Because you're successful.
Yeah. There was one occasion when we were competing against UCLA, and we had a pretty good record against them, and their athletic director asked if she could speak to me after the meet. And she asked me if I was happy at Cal State Fullerton, and I said I was. And I'm thankful that I chose that direction. Mm-hmm. but it definitely, UCLA went on to develop an awesome women's gymnastics program. They hired a really good coach, Val Condos, who's a good friend of mine.
Right.
And she, I don't know how many national championships, she won 5 or 6 or something like that. But UCLA chose to invest in their women's gymnastics program, and Fullerton wasn't able to.
They just, yeah.
So,
just different budgets.
just how it worked out.
Right.
At the time, I was really happy at Fullerton, and we had just beaten them, right? So, but then things changed.
I know it's that interesting question. If you say to her, "No, maybe I'm just kind of happy," does she go, "Well, then let's go to lunch. Let's talk."
Yeah. I took it as an opportunity, and I was happy at Fullerton.
Right.
And I didn't.
You didn't see that giant snowball coming.
I did not. Shame on me, because
Right.
it had already started rolling. I could have seen it, but I didn't.
I mean, is that the hard part too? Is you're so invested in your sport, in your school, that you didn't want to do like what Augie did, where Illinois came to him and said, "We're doubling your salary. You want to come?" And he took the shot for 3 years and he went.
Right.
Was that something like you were just branded Fullerton? You didn't want to leave, even when it was starting to really go bad. And I hate to say that, but those 90s years, it was the numbers were all against you.
Yeah. Gosh, I'm trying to think. I look back, and my parents lived in Fullerton. My close friends were in Fullerton. My church was in Fullerton. I mean, I was a Fullerton guy, not just the university,
right.
the community. And so many people, in fact, you can't talk to Augie now because he's passed away, but if you talk to the people who were successful at Fullerton, I'm sure every single one of them would tell you it was because of the people that lived in the community, the surrounding communities that supported them. And so you're not just attached to the school. In fact, I bet there's certain programs in the country where the athletes and the coaches, they're attached to the school because that's where their support came from. Mm-hmm. At Fullerton, the support didn't come from the school to some degree. Most of the support, we talked about John Gavin at Baggy Sporting Goods. Small little sporting goods store on Commonwealth Boulevard. That's where a lot of our support came from. Fullerton Savings and Loan, Jerry Christie. That's where our support came from. Buck Johns and Larry I mean, you start going down the list of all these people. So when you were attached to Fullerton, when I was attached to Fullerton, I was attached to those people as well, not just the school.
I mean, that's amazing too, that you know the sporting goods shop guy, and the bank guy, and like the restaurateur. That's a special thing at those times at Fullerton, that there was support outside of the university that helped keep things going.
Well, and that became what mattered to us, right? We felt part of that community. So when you feel a part of a community, at least for me, I didn't want to leave that community.
Right.
And
Gene Murphy said the same thing once, that it was Fullerton he really fell in love with.
Yeah, the way that people treated you and respected you and were appreciative of what you'd done. I love people still in Fullerton. They still call me coach.
That's great.
That means a lot.
Yeah.
Funny story. My son, he's 26 now. But when he was in about the second grade, third grade, he had an assignment. He had to come home and ask his mom and dad like how they got their first names. So, Mom, why did your parents call you Bonnie? And she had a story, whatever it was. And he looks at me and says, Dad, why did your parents name you Coach? Because that's what everybody called me.
Right. So as a little boy, that's what you just assumed your name was.
Right.
I call you Dad, they call you Coach.
Right. But the point being is that when you're the coach in that community, to me, it meant a lot.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very special thing.
Mm-hmm.
Were there special athletes you were trying to recruit that slipped through your fingers that you just kind of wish, like, boy, if we gotten her, that might have prolonged the program or helped us out here or there?
You could always go back and look and see, gosh, if we'd had that kid. We were pretty fortunate. We had some really good athletes.
You had some great athletes.
Really good athletes. Some of the top recruits. In fact, there's a recruit that we ended up getting, her name was Ronnie Barrios at the time, and probably top 3, top 5 in the nation at that point in time. And she came to us, and I had a friend of mine whose father collected vintage cars. And so when I picked Ronnie up at the airport, I picked her up in a, I don't know, 1930-something, I don't know, Mercedes, I don't know, some fancy car, right? And that was a big deal, right? And then we took her to Disneyland and took her across on the ferry down at Newport Beach, and we rolled out the red carpet.
Yeah,
right?
Sounds like it.
So her next stop on a recruiting trip was at Oregon State, and Sylvia Moore was the athletic director there. And so Ronnie told, obviously, the athletes on the team about her trip to Fullerton and about the fancy car and whatever it was. And we ended up getting Ronnie, not Oregon State. And the next year, Sylvia Moore put a rule in the NCAA rule book that you had to pick, and it still exists today as far as I know, coaches can pick up athletes either in their own personal car or the state vehicle. They can't go out and do what I did and get a 1935 Mercedes, limousine.
That's great.
I don't even remember what kind of car, but it was an old car. It was really long, and it was really cool.
I love that your recruiting at Fullerton affected the NCAA rule book to be like, whoa, hey.
Yeah.
Can't do that.
So we got some pretty good kids.
Even though Oklahoma State can pick up your kid in a private jet, that's okay.
It's owned by the university.
Yeah. Fullerton doesn't have a paper airplane, so they can't even.
No, we had to do whatever we had to do.
Was it at the time, like, because when you were recruiting, no internet, no website, like it was word of mouth through other coaches, people at other centers, like how was recruiting the process for you back then? Well, you had to rely on a lot of coaches, or was there good networking?
I had a pretty decent network because of my relationship with the KIPS gymnastics program.
Okay.
I'd traveled all over the country, out of the country. One of the first kids on my team was from Canada, right? I had, so I had a network that was already kind of established, and then we had early success, so that was beneficial for us. The hardest part about the recruiting was we just didn't have the money, like to go fly and visit people and stuff. And I remember the first time that we started doing that, it was a big deal. Like the first recruiting trip where we used state money, which was fundraised money by us,
right.
To go somewhere. But then as when Title IX kicked in, guess what? Started recruiting money kick in, and that was another tough challenge for Fullerton.
Did you get any of that recruiting money in your salary? Because, $500 a year is not something a man can live on.
Well, I think the next year I got $1,000 a year because remember Charlotte and I, we were splitting I think we split the $1,000. That's why mine was $500 and hers was $500. And
that's a big bonus, 50%.
And the next year was $1,000.
If you kept that going by the time you retired, you'd have been a very wealthy man.
I ended up doing fine, so no complaints.
So with the program going in the direction you didn't want it to go in those 90s, were you and then were you tinkering in the kitchen? Because Coach's Oats is not something natural. Like Gene Murphy doesn't have a brewing company at this time, and Augie's not doing fish and chips. Where do you come about deciding oats is something I'm going towards?
So I didn't marry. That's pretty common question, like how did you go from teaching somersaults to selling oatmeal?
It's not the normal transition.
Right. And I didn't marry until I was 41. And when you're 41, you don't ask your parents to help pay for the wedding, right? You've already got silverware and blenders and stuff. And Bonnie was older as well. And so we got married on December 7th. And so when Christmas came around, which a couple weeks later,
right,
we had spent our money on the wedding that we had, and we didn't have a very big wedding, but whatever we had, we spent on the wedding. So we didn't have any money for Christmas presents. So where Coach's Oats comes into the picture is that we decided if you were my friend back then in 91, we would invite you to our house on Christmas Eve morning for a breakfast. And we started at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning for people that had to go to work early. And then we went until about 11. And we made everything from scratch. We squeezed the oranges. We made coffee cake. We ground the beans for the coffee. And we thought, we got this idea, why don't we make oatmeal? And
it's quite a commitment.
I don't know where the idea even came from, but we got the idea. And so we had a couple weeks to work on it, because the 7th to Christmas Eve. And we went to Fullerton Hardware. We bought a grinder. And we went to the health food store on Commonwealth, and we bought some groats, which is what the oats are when they come from the field. And we started experimenting with how to make this oatmeal. And one of my friends who was there, I was telling you about him earlier, named Chris Kohlberg, who worked for Arrowhead Water, was a big sponsor of our gymnastics program. We became really super good friends. Anyway, he was there, a bunch of other people were there, and the kids of my gymnastics team were helping serve the breakfast so that Bonnie and I, who were newly married, could visit with our friends. And they were in Coach's house. They were in Coach's kitchen, and they would say, hey, Matt, would you like some of Coach's oats? That's where the name came from. And Chris Kohlberg, being there, being in the food industry, recognized that there was something unique about this product and said, you should take this to a trade show, or why don't we take this to a trade show?
Now, have you made this kind of oatmeal oats thing before?
No.
So this is just on a fly. Bonnie could have said, let's do pancakes.
We did pancakes too.
Yes, but in a unique way. Like all of a sudden, the way you did it was so special that everybody fell in love with it?
It's really unique. I mean, it's totally different. Coach's Oats isn't like any other oatmeal. We got a patent for it. It doesn't get pasty like regular oatmeal does. You can put it in a steam kettle, and it sits there for hours and hours without going bad. It tastes a lot like steel-cut oatmeal. We're getting into the weeds now.
Right, yeah.
Steel-cut oatmeal's got a crunchier and got more of a mouthfeel to it, but you can't bake with steel-cut. You could bake with ours. And remember, we weren't trying to start a business. We were just making oatmeal for our friends. It just turned out that way.
This is just a Christmas get-together.
Yeah.
So where, like, your friend recommends, like, this is something kind of special, how long until you decide this could be something?
Okay, the natural trade show is in March. So this is December. So in March, he takes it. He invites me to go to the trade show with him because he wants to show it around and get people's input. And I'm being the genius that I am. I said, I'm going to go ride my bike that day. I'm not interested in going. So I didn't go. But he believed enough in the product and thought it had potential, and he took it anyway. And he met some different people that gave him their business card. One of the people that he met was from Roman Meal. They used to make the bread. Mm-hmm. And they're located in Fargo. And when he came back from the trade show, he gave me these business cards and said, you should call these people. And I did. So I called, and that's how we got started.
Now, what year is this?
1992, I guess, because I got married in 91. So now we're in March, so we're in 92.
Where now is the balance between, and you were always balancing early on in your career with multiple jobs, where you're balancing Fullerton and maybe this possibly burgeoning company?
So, like I said, we Bonnie and I never thought about starting a company, and it all kept coming to us.
Right.
Chris says, let's do this, and the Roman Meal guy invites me to Fargo, and it just kept pulling on us, right? And I was still coaching. So Bonnie would drive over to the university in her Honda. She'd pick me up at lunchtime. We'd go drive to some potential customer. We'd cook up the oatmeal in the parking lot on a Coleman camp stove. And we'd take it in. One time they saw us. They were up on whatever floor they were on, and they were looking out their window, and here's me and Bonnie cooking up the oatmeal in the parking lot. It made the story better.
Sure, absolutely.
Right? And so then she'd bring me back to school, and then I would coach. And we were working out of our house, and it was on a very part-time, very limited basis while we were, trying to figure it out.
Right. Was there any thought process to, I should get things patented? Should I have a real name? Like, where was the that?
Well, you don't think Coach's Oats is a real name?
But did you think it was at the beginning, or were you thinking,
No.
oh, we should probably call it Grand Oats, or
Actually, some of the people that we were working with at the Arrowhead Water Company, I think they had a marketing department and stuff, and we got to be friends with those people, and they thought it was a great name.
Okay.
So when they encouraged us to go ahead and keep the name, in fact, I think she said something like, your product's good, but your name's worth more.
They weren't worried it was too athletic.
No,
Okay.
they thought it was a good name.
Spot on.
And we got a fair amount of encouragement at the beginning to kind of run with this, and people back in Fargo, they encouraged us to get a patent for it because they had never seen anything like it, and so we did. We ended up getting 2 patents actually for the product, and which was expensive, but
Right.
yeah,
No,
but beneficial.
So who helps you with that patent process? Like, this is no internet, so you're got to do all this legwork on yourself to figure out how a patent you get one.
Yeah, the good thing about working at Cal State Fullerton was you were really connected to the community.
Okay.
There was a need there, right? We none of us are any good if we're not connected and with our community, and so we had people that were supporters of the athletic department that were dialed in with the university, lawyers. And so, hey, we're starting up this company. One fellow was vice president of a bank. So he said, well, you should talk to so-and-so, and they'll tell you about what legal things you have to do to start a business. And that led to a discussion. That led to a patent attorney in a building in Newport Beach that overlooks the ocean, and the guy charges $1 zillion, but it's really worth it. And but yeah, so again, it was going back to those Fullerton connections that helped us get started.
How was doing this little project as it was then and dealing with coaching?
It was really little, so there wasn't a lot. It wasn't a distraction for sure. It did start to pick up some promise, and I knew. Remember, I just got married,
Right.
and my
newly married, new company.
My first son was born in '93, so between '91 and '93, I'm starting to figure out. You know what? I want to be a father more than I want to be a coach. Coaching was 110% all in, go hard, and I knew that if I wanted to be a good father, I couldn't be a good coach. At least that's how I felt.
Right.
I'm not saying that's for everybody, but
Sure.
for me, that's. So I was leaning in a new direction, right? I was headed in a new direction, and starting a business, it doesn't. You just don't like have an idea, boom, start. You got to raise money, you got to do a business plan, you got to start off really small. You make a bunch of mistakes, and you can't be in a hurry. Remember, we talked about process versus goal. So the process is lengthy.
I mean, and this goes back to you being able to lean on people. If you didn't have that relationship with the people at the university or the support, this company probably never gets off the ground because you don't understand.
100%. We knew nothing about business. Bonnie was a graphic designer, took graphic design at the University of Illinois. Turned out pretty good because I got a graphic designer that I sleep with, which is awesome. So,
yeah.
But yeah.
Because you got yourself a coach and a graphic designer. That's not a good way to start a business. Thank God it worked out.
Actually, she's the only one that went to school to learn how to do what we do around here.
That's true.
Right? Jenny was a baseball secretary, Randy was a sports writer, and I taught people somersaults. So
Thank God for Bonnie.
Yeah,
you
really.
got yourself a logo and
100%.
design.
Yeah, for sure.
How were those last couple of years at Fullerton for you as it's winding down?
It was difficult, honestly, because when you were competing at such a high level and able to go after the best recruits in the country and have that level of respect, and then to realize that you just didn't have a bank account big enough to run with the Alabamas, Georgias, Floridas. It was hard. But at the same time, though, you had great respect and appreciation for the athletes that weren't going to go to Alabama, Georgia, Florida, or UCLA. Those kids still had value. Those kids were still in love with the sport. They'd been doing the sport since they were 5 or 6 years old, and maybe they didn't reach the level good enough to go to UCLA, but they still wanted to compete. So it was still fun to go to the gym, and it was still a good experience. Even my wife loved it. It wasn't like we disliked it, but it obviously didn't have the same ring. The bell didn't have the same ring as it had before. And it was also kind of a sign that maybe something else was next for me.
Right. I mean, it's good to see that coming. Like your time, that run that you had. I mean,
my brain was working, right? My brain was saying, okay, there needs to be something else that you can go build, because this thing's kind of built about as far as it's going to be built.
Right. And you ended, but still did another year in fundraising for the university.
Right.
So was that a nice, easier, I guess, step away than like having the program like drop on you like it did in 2008, or them firing you or not renewing your contract? Like you were still around the university and the people?
Well, I had great respect. The person that came in after me had been a gymnast, competed for us, and Julie Bose was her name, and she's phenomenal, was a great coach, and did a really good job with the program. So it was good to still be be able to help Julie when I could, right, and still be part of the program and participate kind of as an outsider almost, but yet still on campus, and facilitate any way that I could, help make that transition easier. And I still had friends there, right? So I still got to see my friends on a daily basis. So, yeah.
So this is 99. You finish up. Coach's Oats is 6 years old. How is it as a company now?
Well, I didn't take a salary for several years.
These are things people need to understand. Like, doesn't mean you start this company, all of a sudden you're paying yourself 6 figures.
Yeah, I paid myself 0 figures and Bonnie 0 figures. We worked out of our home. We ended up hiring people. They would show up at 9 o'clock. At one point, by the time, like say 6 or 7, 8 years later than what you just said there, we had people show up at 9 o'clock in the morning and leave at 5, and we had the family room, a porch off the office, one of our bedrooms. That was all Coach's Oats. And in fact, when we actually moved into an office, one of my sons, the truck came and took the desks and all the office furniture that we had, and he said, well, when are they coming back for the rest of the stuff? And what do you mean? He goes, well, aren't we going to go live with like he thought you lived with Coach's Oats. So he thought we were going to be moving out of the house and go live wherever the office was going to be. It just made sense to him, right? Because he was used to seeing everybody.
That's not the way it works, kiddo. That's just the office furniture. It's going away.
Yeah, so the first few years were lean, but we invested in our employees, and obviously in the product and in the promotion of the product and things like that.
Do you think it helped you being at Fullerton, where you started with a $500 salary, you didn't have a lot, you had to fundraise yourself, that it was that kind of energy helped start a business from scratch?
I'm sure if Gene were around, or Augie were around, Dick Wolfe were around, it's really sad that they're not. But all those guys would tell you that you start with what you want, and then you figure out how to get there. It isn't like someone gives you a bunch of stuff and then you say, okay, what do I want to do with it? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? So, Bonnie and I started to build a vision, and what could this possibly be? And we had to have people sort of convince us, because it wasn't our intent to have a business. We didn't start out saying we want to sell oatmeal for a career.
Right. I mean, that's the crazy thing.
Yeah, and so...
In 1988, this was not in your vision.
Not at all.
You were just having friends over for breakfast, and now it's a business.
Yeah, and it kind of... I was talking to you earlier. We almost feel... We do feel it's a responsibility to ask people when they're talking to us, is it secular? Do you want the secular or non-secular version? Because we're people of faith. This thing came to us. We didn't ask for it. We weren't prepared. This is a true story. Someone, I think it was the vice president of Fullerton Savings Loans, said something to me about you need to download Excel. You need to learn how to work Excel. I thought Excel was what athletes did. I had no clue that it was a program on a computer that you stick numbers into and that it tells you information that's supposed to be valuable. We had a lot of things to learn, for sure. And yeah.
I mean, how was that learning business? Did you embrace the challenge?
I don't ever remember any times where we didn't want to do it, right? It kept growing on us. It kept growing. We want to do it more. We want to do it bigger. We want to, and the thing that started to become clear to Bonnie and I, Titan Gymnastics wouldn't have been Titan Gymnastics if we wouldn't have had people like Arrowhead, or if we didn't have people that believed in what we were doing. Not the winning part, but just investing in young people's lives and trying to make their lives better and to teach certain lessons, right? And we started to quickly learn and grab onto the fact that, you know what, if we do this Coach's Oats thing, we could have some fun. Like, we could do some good with our company, and it could be valuable to other people, and we've had some fun with it.
Is there any early experiences that you wish, and because you can kind of break the company up into, like, now we're going into over 20 years.
Almost 30.
Yeah. Is the first, like, let's say 10, that's the growth period. You wish you could have done something different to either make it smoother, make the transition quicker? Because over 30, that's a big block. But the first 10, that's where things don't make it or make it.
Yeah. If I had to do over again, we would have raised, well, first of all, Bonnie and I, when we went to banks to borrow money, start a business, you need money. I was a gymnastics coach, and she was an art teacher. She was getting her credential to teach art. So we didn't have a lot of money. So we went to banks, and banks said, well, we'll loan you the money, but then you got to put your house up for collateral. And we don't want to do that. So we had people that actually came to us and say, Coach, if you start this business, we'd like to invest in it. Okay. And so we started taking some money, but we didn't take enough. So then we had to go back to the well, because it costs this much money to get into the grocery stores, or it costs this much money to renew the patent, or it costs this much money to hire another person, or this much money to get the trucks, whatever.
Right.
And
all the things you just didn't know.
The first time that the mill wanted to send a trailer truck, we got a call at the house saying, the truck will arrive at your address at such and such a time. This is like a semi coming with 42,000 pounds of oats. I said, we're a house in Brea. You can't bring a trailer truck to my house in Brea. And they go, well, that's your business address. I go, yeah, but it's my house. And they said, well, you need to get a warehouse. Well, I didn't know how to do that. I mean, it sounds really stupid right now to say I didn't know how to get a warehouse, but I didn't know how to get a warehouse. And so there was a lot of things that we had to figure out that people should have known, maybe, perhaps, if they were starting a business. But that's the time and money. It took longer than I expected, and it took way more money than I expected. Yeah. And we had to go, and we actually had, I think, maybe 3 or 4 offerings to raise money to meet the needs that we had. What
did you do right those first couple of years that you were surprised of?
Gosh, no one's ever asked me that question before. Well, the one thing we did right was figure out how to make an amazing oatmeal. I mean, that's the whole God part. Because Bonnie, look, you know how the true story, how the oatmeal came about? The true story is that we made the oatmeal. We were getting ready to make it for that breakfast, and every time we made it, it turned out kind of slimy, like oatmeal can be, right? So, being the genius that I am, I know that, and I have like no cooking experience at all, but I know that if I burn hamburgers or burn hot dogs on the grill, they get kind of crispy. So my idea was to take the oats that we ground up that were turning out pasty, I'm going to stick them in the oven and burn them. And I did that, and we stuck it in the oven, turned them on till it smelled like they were done. We pulled them out. We put those in the boiling water, and that's what became Coach's Oats. And it turns out what we were doing, we were caramelizing. It's called caramelization, where oats have a natural sugar in them. And when you put them in the oven, what smells good when you're making cookies is the sugar burning. So I was caramelizing the oats.
Is that crack
Yeah.
crack process?
Yeah, cracked and toasted. So when we toast our oats now, they turn out different. So.
And it worked.
So that's something that we did really right. My friend from Arrowhead will always tell me, product is king. You can make a lot of mistakes, but product is king.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was one thing we did really right. The second thing that I would say that we did really right was that I have an amazing team of people. Jenny's been with me since she was 19. You know, Randy's been with me like 15 years. I mean, the people, our controller's been with me even longer. We've attracted and brought in really, really good people.
Is that a bit of the coach in you, recruiting the right people?
I think so. And that includes our partners, like the people that manufacture our oats in Fargo, like amazing partners. Like we have a handshake agreement. This is 2022, and we have a handshake agreement from back in 1990, whatever, with that family. It's a family-owned business, and it's Dakota Specialty Milling now. It was Rowan Meal. Our people at CalPack that pack, we just have great partners. Just like Cal State Fullerton, you have good partnerships.
Right. Were there moments in the last 30 years where you thought the company wasn't going to make it, whether it was financial or things beyond your control?
Things like that make you cry when you're going to sleep.
Yeah.
And wonder how much money your parents are going to give you when they die and how much money you're going to get from your grandmother when she dies. Those kind of moments.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, because there's things that just happen, whether it's drought, famine, competition, people just don't want your product anymore, it goes outdated.
Yeah, 9/11 was probably our first major. If we don't figure this out, we're gonna fail.
See, now people aren't gonna think a food product, Coach's Oats, in 9/11.
Well, we were selling cookies to the airlines, and they were a big customer of ours. And then one day they stopped flying, and we were talking about this earlier. We have no complaints compared to the people who lost family members or whatnot. But it threatened our company because all of a sudden there was no cash flow. We have products sitting in warehouses that's going bad that we can't sell anymore. I had employees that we still had to pay. We actually had to let some people go during 9/11. But, you know, we were talking about Fullerton earlier, and now that you asked that question, the more you invest, the less likely you are to let go and fail. I promise you, if I had not gotten in, sometimes I think, man, it'd be nice if I didn't have the investors and we make profit. I get all the profit. But you know what? If we wouldn't have had investors, there have been several times I would have quit because it was too hard, it was too costly, it was too expensive, it was too emotional, it was too whatever. But you have these people that believe in you and that gave you their money. Mostly they give you their trust. They wouldn't say this, but they could lose the money and they'd still have tomorrow, right? But they gave you, they trusted you. And if it wouldn't have been for those people trusting, there were times I definitely would have walked away.
Yeah, that's something that people forget, is that when you have investors, you have to take care of them. They're investing in you, Coach's Oats, Lynn and Bonnie. You
ask Jenny. You out there and ask. She's now our president of the company. Started with us 19. She's 44 now. You go ask her who she works for. She won't say Lynn or Bonnie. She'll say the investors.
Right.
She knows, and we all feel that way. That when we make decisions, we make them with our investors in mind.
Those early years, it's kind of interesting to think, nowadays it's so easy for a company to promote. You got social media, your website, you got all the branches of Twitter and Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. How was those early days for you to promote and advertise the company? Nobody knows the Coach's Oats in Florida or
I was
Montana.
really lucky when we were trying to raise money as a gymnastics coach. Arrowhead was one of the people, I've mentioned them a couple times, that really bought into our program and supported us. I was fortunate to be able to spend a lot of time with those people. And actually, my wife, graphic designer, Arrowhead eventually got bought out by Perrier, and then I think they got bought out by Nestle or something after that. Mm-hmm. And my wife, being a graphic designer, was able to pick up some work working for their company. So we got to spend some time with their marketing people, their idea people, the people that are trying to promote the brand. Mm-hmm. So I think that was really helpful for us, right? And whether it comes to designing logos or whether it comes to designing ads, things like that for the grocery stores. And then just traveling with Chris to the different grocery stores and talking to those people and learning the trade, because that was the only place that we could promote. Like you said, with the social media wasn't around, newspaper ads were really expensive, so it was pretty much street promoting, relationship promoting.
Right.
Not,
you weren't doing 30-second. Yeah.
No, it wasn't media promoting. It was relationship promoting.
Yeah, you weren't doing 30-second TV spots of the Super Bowl to do coaches.
Matt, it's the same thing. Go back to Cal State Fullerton. How did Augie raise money? How did Judy raise money? It was about relationships and going out there and meeting with actual individuals and people and telling your story.
Yeah. I mean, that does say a lot about the people that worked at Fullerton at that time, that 70s and 80s group that really understood more doesn't make you better. Better people make you better, and having them around you and
100%.
And working with them. I mean, the things that Augie and Gene, yourself, Dick, the whole group, they understood that it wasn't millions of dollars a year that was going to make them better.
Nope.
Yeah. Mm-mm. As the company moves forward now, like, are you happy where it's at? Do you look at Coach's Oats and go, I can't believe we pulled this off?
Bonnie and I will tell you, sometimes people say, what do you do? And we have a hard time saying we sell oatmeal because it just sounds weird.
Yeah.
We're really glad we do. Am I happy where we are right now? I'm really happy with the team that we have. But right now, this period in time, 2022, April 2022, it's a hard time for not just our business, a lot of businesses. And I'm happy that we're still here. I'm happy that we're still standing. Trucking shortages, getting truck drivers, getting people to come into the factory to work on your product, inflation, the cost of things. It's a hard time to do business. But at the same time, you feel really proud of the fact that you're still in the mix, right? That you still got your customers, that you still have people that believe in you, and you're still delivering their product. You're still getting it done. Are we happy? No, work's hard right now. This isn't. I mean, we've had times where work's been really fun. You come in and everybody's in a great mood, and when you pick up the phone, you say yes. Now you pick up the phone and you say no, or I don't know, maybe, and. So that part's not fun. So I don't know if fun and happy necessarily go together. We're really grateful.
Okay.
We're still grateful to be in the game. And we have plans for the future. And we have a future. So, yeah.
If I had told you you'd be running Coach's Oats or being a part of Coach's Oats longer than you'd be coaching, would that make you, blow your mind? Like, no way.
I didn't even. That's the first time I've never compared the years. That's interesting. Yeah. Is it longer than when I was coaching? How much?
A lot.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because you ended in '98, right? Mm-hmm. You were at the school till '99.
No, you're right. Because that last year I wasn't coaching. Yeah. Every day when you have your own business, every day you wake up and there's something to do. It's like you go to work and you leave at 5 o'clock and you wait to come in for someone else to tell you what to do. Mm-hmm. You drive around, you and your wife, you talk about it at dinner, you talk about it when you're on vacation. You might argue about it on the way to Mammoth, right?
Absolutely.
What the logo should look like. I like it this way, you like it that way. What should our catchphrase be? Now I've got 2 of my boys that work for the company. And in fact, you talked about the social media thing. Yeah, we actually pay someone full-time salary to do social media and to do that kind of marketing because it's so necessary now. But
Isn't that, it's crazy.
it is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the future for Coach's Oats, Lynn?
The future for Coach's Oats would be I would hope that the world gets a hold of itself and gets a little bit more normal, where you can get ingredients and where you can get supplies. The fun of our business, we love selling oatmeal, and we like to sell oatmeal to more people. Right now, I have a limited supply of oats that I can get because of the drought that happened in Canada. So I can't even go out and really try to get a bunch of new customers because I wouldn't be able to supply them. So we're stuck in a not be able to sell mode. Whether it's cookies or whether it's a pancake mix or an energy drink or whatever, things that we would like to do, we can't do right now because there's no oats.
Right.
And not only are there no oats, it's hard to get cans, it's hard to get bottles, it's hard to get plastic, it's hard to get. So we're in kind of a unique position where we're trying to really take care of our customers, the current customers that we have, to do the best we can and to protect and promote the brand. And at the same time, be ready. Like we had a whole bunch of ideas that when the gates open and we can get oats again, we have ideas and we have people to talk to about running with those ideas. But I have no idea when that's going to be. I would never have thought I'd be talking to you about paying $7 a gallon for gasoline, or can't get a truck to come out of Canada because they're on strike, or whatever. It's a crazy time right now.
Yeah, for any small business owner, it is a absolutely difficult time. What advice would you have for someone, running? They're in their first couple of years of a small business. What advice do you have for them now that you're almost 30 years into yours?
Yeah. Personally, like, this is very personal, pray. Things can be so... like if I were only happy, or if I was only good with my team, positive with my team, if I was only that way when things were going well, that would be a real problem, because it doesn't always go well. And there has to be something. For me, it's faith. For somebody else, they might call it something different. But you have to have something bigger to believe in than just what your daily sales are, or what your delivery times are. Does that make sense? Because
Yes.
it's always bouncing around.
Mm-hmm.
And that's no different than, and this is where the background, it's no different than when you're an athlete, because every day isn't great. You have really lousy practices, and you have to be able to walk off the field or walk out of the gym and say, I'm still a really good gymnast. I'll get it tomorrow, or I'll get it the next day. So that patience or belief in something that's deeper than what's right in front of you is really important. Whether it's a small business, whether you're an athlete, or whatever it is, there has to be something that you believe in that's bigger than what you're dealing with right at that moment, because that just changes all the time. Who knew there was going to be a war? Right? Like, who knew there was going to be a drought in Canada? Who knows that there's going to be 20,000 ships in the Long Beach harbor, right? they can't get in and unload the packaging that you need, right? Or the China, there's just so many things. And so you've got, and I'm really proud of these guys, because they have the attitude, the people that work here have an attitude that is deeper than just what we get with every phone call or with every sales report or whatnot.
Right. What's more difficult, doing that pommel horse or running a small business?
Well, first of all, I never did pommel horse.
Right, but the girls did, right? You coached it.
No, they didn't do pommel horse. They did. They vaulted on.
Oh,
horse.
vaulted, right?
Vault horse.
Vaulted. My bad.
So
yeah.
what's more difficult?
Yeah, the vault or like was running a small business, or the uneven bars, or.
I would say that being a really successful coach and running a small business, you could lay one right on top of the other. There's so many things that are exactly the same. So many things, the kind of character that you have to have, the the ability to pick good partnerships, good people to partner with, including your wife. I mean,
Right.
My wife's been through this drill and been laying next to me when I'm literally tears in my eyes because I don't know where the next dollars are coming from, and I don't want to pick up the phone and call Bob Mandeville and tell him I just lost all your money, right? So, and then you got to know, you got to learn what you know what? I have a friend named Eddie Sheldrake. You know Polly's Pies?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he owns Polly's Pies. He was John Wooden's first point guard, by the way.
Okay.
I can't believe I waited this long to get his name in this interview. 'Cause he's a huge mentor. I don't know how much time we have, but
We got forever.
yeah. Okay, so here's the kind of the good fortune that I've had, and then you go to that secular, non-secular. Because then when I tell a story, you tell me. So one night, I get a phone call about 9:30. I'm laying in bed, and my wife comes in because I go to bed early. My wife comes in and she says, Eddie Sheldrake's on the phone. Well, we had just started selling Coach's Oats to Polly's Pies, and Eddie Sheldrake's the owner of Polly's Pies. So if he's calling my house, I want to take his call. I don't care what time it is. I go downstairs, and I can't use all the words that Eddie uses because he's a very colorful character. He was John Wooden's first point guard, by the way, and in their UCLA Hall of Fame, and he's just a character and really smart. And he says, Coach, says, Eddie Sheldrake, which I already knew, but he had to announce himself anyway. He says, do you know why I called you? I said, no. He says, here's the reason I called. He says, I got your thank you note the other day. You know, he says, I understand we did something on our menus, we mentioned you or whatever, and you wrote me a note and said thank you. He says, you know, when I send thank yous, I don't send paper, because you know with paper, when you get done reading it, what do? You throw it in the trash. He says, I send Jelly Bellies. That way, every time they eat a Jelly Belly, they realize that I'm saying thank you. He goes, good night. And in the midst of all that was a whole bunch of swear words, all right? So hangs up on me. So a little while later, SkyWest Airlines ordered another whole bunch of energy bars from us, like millions of energy bars. And normally I'd been sending a thank you note every time they sent an order. So this time, because of Eddie's phone call, I go down to Eddie's Polly's Pies. They make great oatmeal cookies made with Coach's Oats. I took a whole bunch of those cookies. Jenny probably helped me. We wrapped them all up, put them in a basket, and sent them to SkyWest to say thank you for their order on the energy bars. They get the cookies. They call me up from the conference room. They're having a big meeting. They got the president, vice president, all the top people are there. Coach, we love these cookies. These cookies are amazing. Can you make cookies like this? And we could put them on our airplanes. And I go, I have no idea. I'm not a baker, but I'll go to the guy that did, and I'll probably have to put some shelf life in them because these are fresh, and you got to put them on your planes. And so I go to Eddie and make an appointment. I asked him, I said, hey, could I give you so many cents a cookie if I sell these things to SkyWest, or maybe give you a percentage or something like that? And then he swore at me again. And he said, you're not a very blankety-blank good businessman, are you? And I said, no. He said, what you should do, he says, is sell me some stock in your company, and I'll give you the recipe for free. Okay, that sounds better. So I sold him some stock in my company that day. He gave me the recipe. We got a bakery to make the cookie. That cookie was on the airlines for about 5 years and was voted the #1 snack of all times. And later on, that cookie was in Costco for 12 years. Wow. We sold millions and millions and millions of those cookies, all because he took the time to teach me how to say thank you.
Wow.
You want to start a small business? Go find people that you can trust, that are willing to tell you when you're doing. Eddie became an investor, and he would come to our shareholder meetings, and he was often critical early on. And it got to the point where finally you go, Coach, I'm really proud of you. You're doing a good job. Coach, I'm really proud of you. You're doing a good job. But you need people like Eddie Sheldrake when you start something.
You do, don't you? Mm-hmm. You don't need a bunch of yes men.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, you need Augie to look at you and give it to you straight.
Give it to you straight.
Here's what you need to learn, son. And you're not getting your hat until you do. Another
That's
story. Yeah. Right.
Lynn, I'm glad you were a not the best baseball player. So
Boy,
then
that's an understatement.
yeah, and so you turned out to be one hell of a gymnastics coach, which decided to make some oats for breakfast and had a hell of a great little company going.
Yeah. Thank you.
This has been a fantastic podcast. And I am so thankful I finally got to meet and sit down with you and we got to do this. You have been everything and more Mel Frank said you would be.
I actually had fun. I was nervous. It's fun going back, just like when you talk about Cal State Fullerton, going back and thinking about the good times, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as hard as some of those times were, same thing with the company, those good times that produced a lot of fun. Jenny's she got 2 kids now, that we get to go watch play baseball.
Right.
And I got to see her get married, have children. She has an awesome job. She does an awesome job. So there's been a lot of fun to this. Yeah, it was fun for me today. Thanks.
Well, it's been my pleasure. Absolutely. You're the best. Thank you so much, Lynn.
Yeah, good deal.
Thank you for listening to the Just a Good Conversation podcast with Lynn Rogers. Please click the like button if you enjoyed this episode. Become a subscriber to the show. Please leave a review if you enjoyed what you heard. And remember to follow the Just a Good Conversation podcast on Instagram as well. And you can find all of the past shows on the website at justagoodconversation.com. Thank you for listening.